In the last lesson, we talked about how to work with layers and masks, and also how to work with channels. In this video, we will continue using levels or layers, and we're going to continue to talk about selection and cropping, cutting, deforming, transforming our selection, our layer, our image here in GIMP. And later on, we're also going to talk about paths. So you can see you have three panels here: layers, channels, and paths. Now, this one here is for vector graphics. We already talked about the difference between raster and vector. So the first one is working with pixels. The other one is working with the paths and basically vertices and segments or vectors. So these are pretty different when you design, when you create an image. Usually raster is more like a photograph and vector is more stylized and has less colors and less realism. So we're going to talk about this later on, but I just wanted to show you that paths are another way you can select and you can work with the selections here in GIMP together with the layers and channels and all the other selections too that we saw so far. So you can see right now I have an active selection, and to do this I just went to the channel and right click, and just here I have the option to turn the channel into a selection. So when I save a channel, it's like I'm saving a selection that I've done previously. Now the same thing can be done with the path. So let's assume that I'm creating this selection right now. If I go here to the select menu and go all the way down, we have the toggle quick mask that we saw in the previous video. And then after that, we have the channel. And this is working with the pixels, with the raster graphics. So when we save a channel, we save basically a black and white image with the white representing the opacity and the black the transparency of the image. But we can also turn the selection into a path. So if we do this, we can see now there is a path in our paths panel. Now I'm going to deselect here the selection that I'm doing. So right click, select none. So if I go back to the selection, now I can turn this on and I can see it. And I can also edit this. So to edit the selection, you have some tools that you have right here. And we will see that you have many different tools when working with um, paths and vector graphics. But this one here is the path tool. So if I click, you can see that I can create a path with this. But when I already have a path, I can directly go there and edit the path that I've generated from the selection. So you can see I can click and drag these points. These are vertices. And then you have segments or vectors between one vertex and the other. And then you have handles to define a curvature. So essentially, it's similar to what we done with the selection, but right now it's vector graphics instead of raster. Now, when I finish, I can do many things with this, but we're gonna see this later. But another thing I can do is go back to the selection. So if I right click again here, I can go back here and path to selection. So I can always turn a selection into a path and vice versa, just like I can turn a selection into a channel and vice versa. And so I can also turn a channel into a path using these steps. Now, when I'm finished here, to exit the path, I just need to select another tool. So you can see if I select this tool, I turn off the path, now I can just see the selection. And now I can proceed with this selection, or I can just also deselect everything. So this was to clarify the difference between these three panels and what they are for, and also the difference between a raster graphic and a vector graphic. Now all the pictures usually are raster graphics because they are pretty realistic. Everything that comes from your camera, your smartphone camera, your digital camera usually is made of pixels, so it's a raster image. So you can see I have some images of my own and I can use them to do some example. So all I need to do right now, this is another way you can bring in content in GIMP, is to click and drag directly from the folder inside your workspace. So you can see that if the image is bigger than your canvas size, it's not gonna show up it's just gonna go in the top layer here, and it's gonna be visible only partially. Now, if I close this and just discard the changes and do the same exact operation, dragging and dropping, now you can see it's gonna create a new file, a new Canva, and it's gonna take the whole image. So it's not gonna crop. Now you can crop if you want. Let's zoom all here in the workspace. You can crop with the crop tool. Now we're gonna explore a little bit more the cropping feature here in GIMP. So first of all, Shift C if I wanna recall the command, and then I can click and drag. Now I wanna reset this. So I'm just gonna reset everything to the default values. So you can see this is how usually you will see it the first time. So if I click and drag, it's just going to create a rectangle, and it's going to gray out everything else outside that rectangle. Now that's going to be here in the highlight. So you want this highlight turned on, and you want also to manage the opacity. So if I increase this highlight opacity value a lot, you can see that it's going to be opaque when I reach 100. So I cannot see the rest of the image. And this is good because I can see what the crop is doing. So I can fix it. And this is whole in a real-time preview. So it's really handy to understand what is going to come out of this. Now, I'm not using a particular resolution here or sizing, but I can define a precise size here. So I can say, okay, I want this to be 180 for the width and 1920 for the height. So this is actual full HD, but in vertical. And you need to click to define and to finish the crop. So if you do Control Z, you can go back. Now, if you want, these are values that you can also fix. So if I do fixed, when I click and drag, that's going to be a fixed ratio, aspect ratio, which is this one here at the moment. But again, I can change it. Let's make it 1080. And now you can see it's maintaining the same ratio. So if I want to change the ratio, I need to uncheck that. So let's make 120, 1920, and 1080, and let's do fixed. So you can see now will be fixed on the full HD. So I can stay with the same proportion, but make it bigger or move it around. You can also move it with the position values. So this is the X and this is the epsilon. And here we can also change and maintain the width fixed. So it's just going to maintain the width to 100 right now. It's really small. So let's make it 1000. And let's click again. So click and drag. You can see now it's maintaining only the width. I can change the height, or I can do the opposite. So I can make the height fixed, and then I can change the width. And again, this is too low, it's 100, so let's make it at least 1000. So you can see I can lock one size or the other. Or I can just define a precise size. So let's do like 1000 times 1000. So just click. So I'm just going to go back, click and drag. You can see now I can only work with this square because this is now fixed and it's 1000 times 1000. So it's really precise measure, and I can move around. I cannot scale it. I cannot do anything else. So if I want to unleash this, just deselect that, go back to aspect ratio, and now you're free to resize the crop however you want using the handles. And you may have a look here to the final size, which is now kind of 2K resolution. Now you can also work with the guides if you want to be more precise. So you can work with guides or just turn them off. And well, let's go up here again. Let's go back up and let's start to talk about all these other stuff. So expand from the center is pretty self-explanatory. So if I click and drag now, it's going to expand starting from the center instead of from an angle, from a corner. If I click and drag this, you can see it's not going to go further than this dashed yellow line, because that's the limit of our layer that we're working on right now. But if I check allow growing, I can go outside. I can create an extra space basically. And then I need to choose if I want to fill this extra space with transparency or with a pattern or with white or with a background color or foreground color, which are those two right here at the top. You can also switch them, but I want to fill it just with white. So once I finish to define the crop, and you can also press enter if you want to apply, or you can press ESC if you want to exit. Now I want to turn this expand from the center off so I can start from an angle here. And again, I'm going to allow growing and use like transparency this time. So you can see now it's going to be black, and let's press enter. Okay, so now you can see that all the rest is transparent. And when you see this dashed line, that's going to tell you that you still have those pixels outside the image sides, which is this other one. So if I move around the image, you can still see the image in there. So those are not deleted pixels. Now let's go back again to crop, and I'm gonna do another crop like this, for example, and I'm gonna decrease the opacity a little bit. Now if I do auto shrink, it's automatically going to shrink to the size. So let me just make this bigger than the image, like this. So I press enter. So you can see I have some extra space all around. And now if I do again the crop like this and then do auto shrink, it's going to define automatically that area to be cut, determined by the presence of pixels. Now I need to use all visible layers while shrinking the selection, so it's going to work. Otherwise it didn't. So if I don't use all the layers, you can see it's not auto shrinking. Now this means that I can also work with the other layers. So if I bring in another image here, again I'm going to click and drag and drop it inside, so it's going to go in the same exact composition. So I'm going to move this. I'm going to exit the crop first, and I'm going to move this right here so they kind of overlap, and I want this other to be on top like that. Okay, so if I go to crop and define like an area like this and then do auto shrink, you can see it's gonna take both layers into consideration when cropping. Now also here you see when cropping you can choose if you want to only crop the current layer or if you want to crop the, the layers that you see. So if I do like this and then crop, so press enter, you can see now it's cropping both layers. If I turn this on and again crop like this, press enter, you can see it's only cropping this layer right here, and it's also filling it with this black right now, not with the transparency, because probably this one doesn't have an alpha channel. So let me just go back, Control Z, and let's go here, right click, add the alpha channel, and then again let's do the crop, press enter, and now you can see the background there is visible thanks to the alpha channel that we just added. So these are different combination that you may need. Now delete cropped pixels. This is also really interesting. So let's deactivate allow growing right now, and also all these others. And also I want to turn off the current layer only, because this is only working if I turn off this. So let's say delete cropped pixels. And again, I'm going to crop like this and press enter. Now this time you see that the dashed line doesn't go outside the limit of the overall composition of the canvas. So now we actually deleted those extra pixels that were out there. So if I move this around, you can see there are no extra pixels and the image is actually cropped. So nothing but this part of the image will be available right now in my composition. Everything else outside the crop was deleted, every pixel. So this is the difference. If I leave this off and crop and press enter, you can see I can still see the dashed line is bigger, and then I can move the image around. I still can retrieve those extra pixels that went outside my image side. So by now you should have understood the difference between the image and the layer and the selection. So right now I'm gonna go back and I want to crop the current layer only, and I want to crop a little bit more of this image right here so that it's kind of half and half. So I'm gonna press enter, okay, and then want to crop everything. I don't want anything that's outside this frame right here. So this is fine. And I just want to show you here that, well, I'm also going to flatten this. So I'm going to go to the flatten layer. There you go, flatten image or merge visible layers. It's the same right now. Okay, so we have these two images that are now combined together, and we're gonna do a little bit of transformation. Now, first of all, I want to go back to layer. I want to finish with this transform. So here, when I flip horizontally, I'm gonna flip the layer that I'm working with. So right now they are all merged together, so there is no difference. If I go back, Control Z, and divide those two and go to layer again and transform and flip, you can see it's only flipping one of the two because I'm working with the layer right here. I'm not working with the entire image. So also if I go here in image and do transform, I flip, you can see now I'm working with the whole composition, the whole image, which is including these two layers. So you don't need to merge them or flatten everything out in order to work on in the entire composition. You just go to image. So also here you can rotate, you can flip, and so let's do arbitrary rotation. So you can see I'm rotating the composition. So let's do rotate and let's see what's gonna happen. Okay, now it's just went bigger here. So it applied the rotation but created extra space, so it didn't crop. Now let's go to the image again. Sorry, to the layer and transform. And let's do here again arbitrary rotation. You can see now it's only rotating that layer and it's not adjusting the size. So the extra part will be outside the frame. Now let's merge again these two. So right click and merge visible layers. Okay, now be careful how you merge. In this case, I want to do expand as necessary. So they both fill the layer. And then again, let's go to layer, transform, and arbitrary rotation. So you can see now I'm rotating both, but I'm also cropping those. So it's pretty different when you're working with layer and when you're working with the overall image. Now, again, I'm going to go to layer. I want to show you one last thing about this menu, and that is the offset. Now, when I merge everything together, now this is considered as a single image. And when I do the offset, I'm going to move the image on the X or on the epsilon. But look what happens. You can see that when the image disappear on the right, it's going to start to reappear on the left in a loop. You can also move it on the epsilon. So you can see it's kind of repeating and tiling the two images over and over again. You can also do dividing by 2. And you can also change the edge behavior. So if I do fill with the background color, you can see the extra part will be filled with the background color right here. If I do make transparent, you can see that when I finish the offset, the rest is going to be transparent. Now let's offset like 200 and 200 pixels from the X and from the epsilon. So you can see that that's the offset part right there. So you can make it transparent. You can continue in a loop with wraparound. You can fill the background color. It's up to you. And then you can also clip or adjust. And you have other stuff here. The blending modes, we already know about those. You can also split the view here and see the preview of what is going to be before and what is going to be after. Okay, just an extra tool that can be useful. Now let's talk about the transformation tools or deforming tools. Then starting from this one here, Unified Transform Tools, are all these right here. So let's start with the Unified Transform tool. Now we already see this before, and so the one thing I want to point out is when you decide to transform something, you can either choose the layer or the selection or the image or the path. So you can see that you have options. So if you work with the image, so if I do here, if I click, you can see it's taking everything that it's inside. Let me just go back. So also if you have two layers, you can see that when you do the image, it's going to take everything into consideration. So it's working with the image. If you, let's just close this or ask, if you use the layer, it's just going to work with a single layer. Now you can see that the handles have different purposes. So this one here is to scale. Then you have this one here to distort, like perspective. And then you have this one here to skew. And then again, this one here is distort. And then you have also the rotation. So everything is in one single tool, which could be a little bit confusing sometimes. Now you also have selection, so and path. So if you want to work only with the selection, I'm gonna create here a selection, and now I can go here in the unified transform, and I can just modify the selection using this exact tool, transform, and there you go. So you have a different selection. So depending on where you want to work with, you can change here your target and also paths, as we saw before. Now direction, this is a bit more complex, so let's leave this for later. And let me just show you here something about clipping. So again, this is similar to the crop tool. So when I clip, I can decide if I want to adjust, if I want to clip, or if I want to crop to result or crop with aspect. So these are just different outcomes. Now let's work with the entire image, and I'm gonna like expand this a little bit like this. So if I do this, the first one, so clipping, adjust, and just transform, you can see that the image side is going to readjust to make everything visible. Let's do Control Z. Let's change this to clip, and let's do a similar thing. So I'm just gonna make this a little bit bigger and just distort this. Okay, and transform. So you can see now it's clipping the rest of the image that is gonna go outside my frame. Now let's do crop to result. Again, I'm gonna distort, transform, and you can see it's again cropping. And finally, we do with crop with aspect and transform. Again, you can see it's cropping, but it's also making the size a little bit bigger. Now, also here you have the preview. When you do some change like this, you have some preview, so you can change the image opacity. You also have composite preview with if you have linked items, and also if you want to do this well, these are extra parameters if you want. And then you have again guides to guide you, and then you have a series of constraints when you move, when you scale, when you rotate. You can see here constraint the aspect ratio when scaling, keeping the degrees when you are rotating, and only use along edge direction when you do share, and also perspective. And also you can do from pivot, you can hold control if you want to use the pivot, which is this one here when you are scaling, moving, rotating, share, perspective. And you can also snap to the pivot and lock the pivot position to the canvas. So you can see it's not moving, it's still in there. So you have many different options that you can try. Those are not like paramount, but you can use them. Now, I think that working at first with the Unified Transform, it has a lot of options, so it could be a little bit overwhelming. So give it some time and try all the combination. Now, what I want to do is just go back a little bit, and I want to use the rotate tool. Now, rotate tool, you can see here we have only this constraint right here when we rotate. So when I click and drag, it's going to rotate only 15 degrees. And I can turn this off. Again, also here, I have the image opacity, and I have composite preview and all that stuff. And again, I can use clipping, cropping, adjusting, and whatever. And now we can talk about direction, normal, and corrective. Now, let's assume that my image, let me see here, I'm just going to crop or clip a little bit this image. Like, let's assume that my image is like this. So sometimes when you take pictures of something, the horizon could be not straight. So you can definitely rotate it and adjust it just by simply rotating. So if you click and drag, you can define where the horizon is, or you can also use the, let me just close this. You can also use the corrective backward. So this means that it's kind of a backwards operation. So instead of rotating from here, I can rotate again, and you can see this line at the bottom. Now this should be parallel to what I think the horizon would be. So in this case, I'm rotating like this, but instead of rotating, it's going to readjust. It's going to, make this part horizontal. So it's kind of a fixing tool when you have a non-perfectly horizontal horizon. So you can use the normal, you can use the corrective. It's just up to you. Now let's go forward. Let me just go back a little bit. So let's go forward. The scale. So you can see in the scale, you can do it using the center. You can keep the aspect, or you can just distort the image. Usually it's recommended to keep the aspect on. And then again, you have the same exact settings. And then you have the share tool. Again, pretty self-explanatory. You're just gonna distort using horizontal lines or vertical lines. And then you have flip again, flip tool. So just click and flip. So nothing too complex. And then you have perspective. Now this is a little bit more complex. Now when you have perspective, you can turn this image into a perspective. Now be careful whether you are in normal, forward, or corrective. So in this case, let me just exit and let me create a perspective effect. So I'm just gonna use the normal one. Click on this handle, and you can constrain the handle. You can also hold the shift key. So you can make it run only on this vertical line, and you can also do it around the center. So you can see here is like rotating around a center. And you can see it's assuming the aspect of a image in perspective view. So let's transform. Okay. Now let me show you another image. Just gonna click and drag and place it again. Now you can see we have a pretty distorted image here, distorted by the perspective. So we can fix this a little bit using the perspective, just as we did, but we can also use the corrective again. So in this case, when I create let me just unconstrain here. So when I create the handles here for the perspective, I'm just gonna try to replicate that perspective in there. So I'm just gonna transform, and you can see it kind of straight up everything. So this is kind of the opposite of distorting in perspective. And then perhaps I need to readjust this layer. So I'm just gonna use the layer here, and I'm going to ask unconstrain also here everything, especially the let me just adjust. Just want to make it smaller like this so it's more proportion. Next one in line is the 3D transform tool. So again, I'm gonna select this layer and just gonna start to click and drag. And again, here you have some constraint, just reset the tool to start from the beginning. So you can see when you use this, you're gonna click and drag and the image is gonna rotate just like you are in 3D. And you can also rotate by using the X, epsilon, and Z axis right here. So you can give a nice 3D effect to your images and to your composition. Then you can move it using the X and the epsilon and the Z. And you can also change the vanishing point here. Just click and drag on the arrows, so you can see you can use this point as a vanishing point, and also change here the focal length if you want. So you can play around with this again, relative to image or relative to the view and so on. When you finish, just hit transform. Here you have again another set of settings like clipping or adjusting, or you can use guides, or you can have a unified interaction, or constrain the axis with the shift key. If you hold the shift key, you can transform along the Z axis if you press the control. So you can just move it up and down. And then you have local frame alt. So you have these other options if you want. Just gonna scale it down a little bit like this, and then hit transform when you're finished, when you're ready. Now, the next one is the handle transform tool. For this one, I want to change the image. So I want to flat everything out here. So right click and merge visible layers like this, and then take everything and bring it. So Control C, bring it in this other image that we use in our video. Control V to paste and create a new layer. And then let's transform this. Let's use the Unify Transform tool first. So I'm just gonna scale these down, and let's keep the scale ratio. Okay, let me just go back and scale, keeping the ratio. Let's make this small and transform. Okay, so we can see this is our composition right here. Now I don't want all of that around, so I'm gonna crop the current layer only this time, and just gonna crop like this part. Press enter. Okay, and now let's use the handle transform tool. So to transform this, we need to set up a matrix. Now let's reset everything. So you click here and you define handles. You can see I only place 4 handles, and then I can hold the shift if I want to move the handle. I can remove the handle holding control, or I can add again another handle. Now with the handles I have, I can click and move them into position. So you can see it's a deformation based on these points that I point out. Okay, and you can create now a perspective or whatever you want. Now, if you want to be more precise, you have also other options. So let me just go back, Control Z, and you have the warp transform. Now, warp is going to warp everything like a vortex. So perhaps it could be interesting to do it right here on the hair or something like that. So it's a really high deforming tool, and you can change the size of the brush, you can change the hardness, the strength, the spacing. Okay, so and then you have other algorithms that you can try out. You can also create an animation defining a series of frames. Now let's finish with the cage transform. Now cage transform will be a more complex transformation based on more points. Now with this one here, you have only 3 handles. With this one here, instead, you have more points or handles that you can use. So try to get the image that you want to work with. So in this case, is this one here, and I'm gonna push that around like this, so you can see it's creating like something like tissue or something like that. So something really uh, deformed than before, that it was just a simple perspective. So you can create also, and here we can fill the original position of the cage with a color, and so you can change a little bit again some parameters. So you can see that it turns out that it becomes kind of a paper or something like that. So you can still place it there on the screen, but probably it's better to work with the perspective with fewer cage transform points. But you get the idea. So this will be all for this lesson. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to stay updated. Join if you want to support us, and see you in the next lesson.